The focus of this discussion will be on the visual experiences of blind individuals during NDE, near-death experience, drawn from the research presented in the book Mindsight by Dr. Kenneth Ring and Sharon Cooper. I will begin by outlining the author's backgrounds and qualifications. Let's get started.
Are established researchers who brought significant academic weight to the field of near-death studies. Kenneth Ring, Ph.D. Dr. Ring is widely considered one of the founding fathers of near-death research. Education. He earned his Ph.D. in psychology from the University of Minnesota in 1963. Academic rank. He is Professor Emeritus of Psychology at the University of Connecticut, where he taught and conducted research for over 30 years. Pioneer status. He co-founded the International Association for Near-Death Studies, IANDS, and was the founding editor of the Journal of Near-Death Studies. Author. He has written several definitive books on the subject, including Life at Death, 1980, and Lessons from the Light, 1998. Shift in perspective. Interestingly, he began his career as a traditional, atheistic social psychologist, but shifted his focus to transpersonal psychology after being struck by the consistent, data-driven patterns in near-death accounts. Sharon Cooper, M.A. Sharon Cooper provided the essential research support and co-authored the book Mindsight with Dr. Ring, which expanded on the study you are reading. Education. She holds a Master of Arts, M.A. Professional role. At the time of the study, she was a research assistant at the University of Connecticut. Contribution. Her work was instrumental in the logistical heavy lifting of the study, conducting the in-depth interviews with blind participants and collaborating with organizations like the American Council of the Blind to find qualified subjects. Why their credentials matter for your video. In the 1970s and 80s, NDE research was often dismissed as fringe or new age. Ring and Cooper's work is respected because they use structured scientific methods. 1. Controlled samples. They specifically targeted a difficult-to-find demographic, the blind, to test a specific hypothesis. 2. Psychometric tools. Ring developed the Weighted Core Experience Index to quantify how deep a person's experience was, moving away from purely anecdotal storytelling. 3. Institutional backing. Their work was funded in part by the Institute of Noetic Sciences and published in peer-reviewed journals. The study begins with a paradox. How can someone who has never seen light or color, someone blind from birth, report seeing their own body or the hospital room during a medical crisis? Before this paper, such stories were largely dismissed as hearsay or pious fabrications. Skeptics like Susan Blackmore argued that these visions were just the brain creating a best-guess image based on what the person heard or felt while unconscious. Ring and Cooper set out to prove or disprove this using a systematic, scholarly approach. 2. The methodology. The sample. They interviewed 31 blind people. The categories. Asterisk congenitally blind, blind from birth, the most critical group for the study. Adventitiously blind, lost their sight later in life. Partially sighted, retained some light perception. The goal. To see if blind people have near-death experiences, NDEs, if they claim to see during them, and if those claims can be corroborated, proven by independent witnesses. 3. Key findings. The what happened. The results were startling and challenged the biological understanding of vision. 1. NDEs are universal. Blind people have the same types of NDEs as sighted people: the tunnel, the light, the life review, the feeling of peace. 2. Visual perception. 80% of the respondents claimed they could see during their out-of-body experiences. 3. Accuracy. Many were able to describe specific visual details they could not have known through touch or sound, such as the colors of clothing, the design of a jewelry piece, or the number of people in a room. To provide a deeper scholarly analysis of the study, we can examine 3 distinct cases that Ring and Cooper used to challenge the biological and psychological limits of vision. These cases were selected to address specific variables: congenital blindness, adventitious, later life blindness, and veridical, verifiable perception. 1. The case of Vicky Umipeg, congenital blindness. Vicky's case is the cornerstone of the study because she was congenitally blind. Her optic nerves were destroyed by RLF, retinopathy of prematurity. She had no visual library in her brain to pull from. The depth of the experience. During her second NDE, a car accident, Vicky reported a sudden transition from darkness to a multidimensional clarity. She did not just see the hospital. She described the perception as being omnidirectional. She could perceive the ceiling, the floor, and the hallway simultaneously without turning a head. The identification paradox. She saw a body on the table and didn't immediately recognize it as herself. She only identified the body as hers by recognizing a specific ring she wore and her long hair. This is a critical scholarly point. It suggests that her perception was objective and external, rather than a dreamlike projection of her self-image. Scholarly significance. Because Vicky had no concept of light, the fact that she described brightness and clarity suggests that her consciousness was accessing a mode of perception that does not rely on the physical retina or the visual cortex's previous programming. 2. The case of Brad, adventitious blindness. Brad was a 37-year-old man who had been blind for 15 years following a boxing injury. Unlike Vicky, Brad had a memory of what the world looked like, but his physical eyes were non-functional. The depth of the experience. Brad's NDE occurred during a close call with a serious illness. He described finding himself in a room that was made of light. He specifically noted that he was able to see the texture of the walls and the depth of the space, which were far more vivid than his memories of sight from 15 years prior. The resolution of sight. Brad emphasized that his vision during the NDE was perfect. He could see the intricate details of a field of flowers and the shimmering quality of the light. Scholarly significance. This case helps researchers distinguish between memory-based hallucination and independent perception. If Brad were merely remembering sight, the images would likely be fuzzy or based on his last known visual memories. Instead, he reported a HD quality of sight that exceeded anything he had experienced when he was a sighted man. 3. The case of Frank, veridical perception. The case of Frank, a pseudonym, is used to address the skeptic's challenge. How do we know they aren't just imagining things? Frank's case provides veridical evidence, information that could be checked against reality. The depth of the experience. Frank was blind, but reported an out-of-body experience, OBE, while in the hospital. He claimed to have floated out of his room and seen a man standing in the hallway. The specific detail. Frank described the man's clothing with startling accuracy, specifically mentioning a very distinct, ugly tie with a particular pattern and color. The corroboration. After the experience, it was confirmed that a man wearing that exact ugly tie had been standing in that specific spot in the hallway at the time of Frank's crisis. Scholarly significance. This is what researchers call veridical perception. Because the blind subject could not have seen the tie with his eyes, and the tie was not a standard hospital item he could have guessed, like a white coat, it provides empirical weight to the theory that consciousness can remote view the physical environment. Synthesis of the three cases. When you look at these cases together, Ring and Cooper argue that we must move away from a medical model of the mind. 1. Vicky proves that you don't need a visual history to perceive. 2. Brad proves that NDE sight is superior to memory-based sight. 3. Frank proves that the perception can be objectively verified in the physical world. The authors conclude that what the blind are experiencing is not seeing as we know it, photons hitting a retina, but rather transcendental awareness, a direct knowing of reality that the brain then translates into visual metaphors so the person can explain it to others.
So let me break the whole video down in simpler form. You had researchers that studied near-death experiences. You had skeptics that were saying that they don't believe that people had out-of-body experiences. And when they seen it because the brain lasts for 10 minutes. So it just restored memory from vision. So they end up studying with the blind see when they have NDE. And then again, the first research they were studying with people who could see at first and then went blind. So of course they made the same criticism. So now they finally studied someone who couldn't see at all from a child born up to adult, and they could see. And they're saying the reason is because once they touch something, they understand what it is and was taught what it was. So now their brain helps them just describe what they've seen after death. So just breaking down a little bit.